Tarry here, where the stories never grow old, and you hear something new every time they are told, and it comes clear. So tarry here, where it doesn't matter your age, and when we gather round the table, we all take the stage year after year. So tarry here.
Welcome to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stash Sielkowski.
Today is July 3rd, 2025. It's not Monday, but we're pretending it is. And our theme today is sci-fi part 2, science fiction part 2. And we'll see how that goes. It's going to be an interesting show. How are you, Stash?
Oh, I'm I'm raging against technology, but that's it's just our neighborhood was hit by a lightning strike 2 days ago now, and just incredible. All of our neighbors have no Wi-Fi. And we've been in touch with stuff and everything. In fact, I was recording. There was such a storm that our streets were filled like rivers. At our intersection, one going north and south, one going east. There was water was pouring over the filming that. I thought, I get a little video of the storm, and Terry had even opened the window so my video would be nice and clear, and, no glass and everything. And all of a sudden there was a lightning bolt and a flash that just scared the heck out of both of us, and I almost fell off the couch. I was kneeling on the couch doing it, and I kept the recording going, but then stopped it. And after that, we got called. Terry talks to all the neighbors in case of any kind of things going wrong. And the lady across the street called immediately, and their Wi-Fi is gone. Our Wi-Fi is gone. Dave's Wi-Fi is gone. There were people standing out on their front porches looking around stuff. And, Terry contacted Infinity, and they said, we can get our thing replaced. At first, you couldn't get anybody because, tied up. We could get our box replaced and everything because it's in that neighborhood. Well, Terry was going to go with our neighbor across the street, this lady Melissa, and she said, "Don't bother, Terry. My friend down the street was just down there. There's a line around the block, and they're being told at the door, we already gave out everything we have. We have no more equipment to give out. There are no more." And Terry talked to the company Infinity, and the guy said, well, we can send a technician out with equipment to take care of you. And this was on the 1st. And he said, the soonest we can get somebody there is 10 o'clock on the 6th. And that was 5 days later. And then luckily, Terry's son, we talked to Terry's son, who's an IT, really good IT guy. And he said, he told me how I could use my phone to get a hotspot, use my phone data, get a hotspot so I could get on my iPad. And because I told him I got this coming up, and I got something later today, talking to my editor about the book I'm working on. And so he showed me how to do that over the phone, which was quite a bit of stuff. And this morning I got up early purposely, and it took me a half an hour to get this connection going. And and I have no guarantees. Last night I was using it, and it went out. and so I have no guarantees I'll be here for more than seconds or something, because I've been told that it's using up my data from the iPhone, and there's a mystery. I don't know why my iPhone is running my iPad, but it, I told Terry it makes me feel like as bad as my legs are. If I want to go to the kitchen, they send in a little 5-year-old grandson or something to hold my hand and take me to the kitchen.
Well, I guess we should get started on storytelling right away because we never know.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Okay,
well,
so you want me to start?
Quite a tale all by itself.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm working. This is a sci-fi story that I'm working on. Um, you know, and it's based on my interest in Voyager 1 and Voyager 2.
Okay.
And those two craft, I want to call them. I don't know what calling them spacecraft is kind of weird because as soon as you say spacecraft, I think to most people it indicates, oh, who's flying it? Who's in that? Nobody's in these. These are like robots, and they are outside of the solar system, and they have traveled since 1977. So for 48 years, they have been going. They had different missions. Neither one of them expected to get out of the solar system and still be communicating. Voyager 2 was sent to go on a like a trip to some of the outer planets. First of all, sent off on a rocket, but then using gravitational attractions of large planets in the solar system to attract them and then sling them around to different planets. And so that was Voyager 2's, that was their plan. Voyager 1 was being sent on a straight path through our solar system, not trying to use any gravitational pulls or anything, headed out to the solar system. Well, after 48 years, excuse me, I almost said days. After 48 years, it turns out that both of them have left the solar system. No one in NASA expected that they would go that far. They didn't think that the plutonium nuclear material would keep powering either one of those crafts. And the crafts don't look like a spaceship or anything. There are a lot of pictures you can see on YouTube and in NASA sites. They're just a collection of different kind of things, aerials, devices that look like they could be giving out some kind of rays or light beams or something, and so they're strictly devices that can receive signals from Earth and can return signals. And they've been doing it for 48 years, which is amazing. They are both now about 16 billion miles away from the Earth. That's an incredible distance. And what has been happening lately, and I've been following this for a long time because it's fascinating to me, that in the last couple of months, both Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 have sent information back to Earth that at first seemed like some kind of problem because it was different than the kind of information that had been being sent back all these years. Mostly the data that was sent back was just to the people at NASA. It was just ordinary stuff, about what the sensors were picking up. And for much of it would be empty data, and empty in the sense that they weren't near anything. They're out in space, and they're thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away from anything. And occasionally they would maybe pass by something like an asteroid or something that would cause a signal to be sent. And there were signals that the NASA people would expect. But in the last couple of months, they have been getting data from the two Voyager craft that indicates something is interacting with them. And that sounds, that's kind of both very interesting and also very scary, because it's as if there is another kind of device that NASA does not have a record of or know anything about, but that other thing is acting in an intelligent way with the Voyager crafts. That there is information and data being sent to and from the Voyager craft, which at first was considered, something, the equipment has just gone bonkers because this doesn't make any sense. But now, in analyzing it, it makes sense if they started to think that the Voyager craft are interacting through data with some other intelligence. And because the data makes sense according to how those two craft interact with Earth. And it seems that they can't say absolutely this is what's happening. It seems strong evidence that they are interacting with an intelligent, they actually use the word with an intelligence. And according to all the information that they already had or supposed or had in their data from previous experiments, mostly with telescopes and some of the telescopes that have been sent up into the solar system to look at things. The space that the Voyager crafts are both in now is absolutely empty. They have thousands and thousands and thousands of miles in front of them and now behind them and around them where there are no things. They're outside the solar system. There are no planets there. They're nowhere near any stars. The closest star at the speed that those spacecraft are moving, the closest star, they wouldn't reach the closest star for 16,000 years. So there shouldn't be any interaction with other intelligence. And the freaky thing is they worry about analyzing this data, and some of the things I have been reading, it sounds like they're not saying everything that they think or know or are learning about this other intelligence. And at no time are they saying, well, there are creatures out there. They're saying an intelligent response and an intelligent interaction with the Voyager craft is taking place. And I think they're saying very careful in how they're saying it, because they're making it like, okay, here, it sounds just like there's another kind of thing, like a different thing, but like Voyager, that somebody, something, some intelligence sent out from someplace else, and it's now has crossed paths with these two spacecraft from the Earth. No report from NASA or any scientists who have jumped into the discussion are suggesting, little green men or something like that. But it is a big puzzle, and no one has said anything about worrying about what this will cause, because they really don't know what it is. But it's so unexpected and so challenging to them that they're not sure what to do about it. And they can't really do anything about it. Voyager 1 and 2 are on a path now that NASA has no control over whatsoever. The only control that they have in a sense is if they turn off on Earth, if they turn off their equipment and stop monitoring what's taking place. That way they'd have control over it. It's like, okay, here's our robot and it's running towards the other side of the county. Well, we're just going to stop paying attention to it. and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do. And as far as I can tell from all the information I've gathered, they really are just shaking their head and wondering what to do, continuing to collect the data and analyzing it. And now they have an entire group. They don't say how many and where they are. An entire group of people who are trained in astrophysics and astronomy, looking at this data and trying to find out something that they can say publicly, so there isn't some kind of crazy reaction. We can't do anything about any of this. That's the problem. There is nothing we can do except we could disconnect, but that wouldn't solve anything. And the interesting thing about this is that it takes about 17 hours. Excuse me. I'm saying now 17. Yeah, it takes about 17 hours for a signal to get from a spacecraft that's that far away, in order to then receive that signal and reply. And I'm using the word reply in a really fictional kind of way. In order to reply, to send a signal back acknowledging that, takes another 17 hours. So imagine being on a phone call and someone says hello, and you will not be able to respond to them. It'll take 34 hours from the moment they said hello to they hear you say, "Who is this?" that really,
Let's hope they don't actually say that.
Pardon?
Let's hope that that is not the actual conversation.
No, well, and hopefully, well, who is this would be one question, but hopefully the response would not be boom, or a
Where
giant,
are you?
right? You know, um, it just is, to me, it sounds like the engineers and the scientists who are dealing with this data are not happy because they don't know what to do with it. You know, it's one thing. I mean, I think of it as, you know, in the old days in the movies, it's one thing to know there's something behind the door and to have the ability to open it up and face whatever it is. It's another thing to know something's behind the door, and when you open the door, there's nothing that you can interact with. And it's just, you know, it's just my analogy.
That's good.
And it's kind of freaky. Just like, oh boy. Um, anyway, I've been monitoring this by going onto the internet and things. And then I told you earlier at the beginning of our broadcast here, I'm having some trouble with my internet, and but I keep hoping that maybe it'll be some kind of um, an announcement sooner or later that about whatever they're interacting with. Um, I absolutely do not expect to see a picture of, you know, somebody from Gamma 3 or something like that. But I am hoping that there's something that they'll see,
Well,
or that they imagine.
let's hope that your recent technology issues in Martinsburg are not related.
Wow, that would be something. I mean, you know, we've been, let's see, how long, I'm trying to think, how long have we been using? I mean, I've been using an iPad maybe for 20 years, probably not much longer than that. And it's, you know, it's been wonderful and all that stuff, but to have an entire, I've never experienced where an entire area of a city or a town, everyone lost their ability to connect to the internet. I mean, and truly, I've been in storms. I've been in, you know, in the military. I was in a horrible hurricane. You know, storms and violent and things. I have never had a reaction to a flash that happened with Terry and I at that window, and both of us, I almost fell off the couch, and Terry backed up quickly away from the window, and we both, I'm not sure if we screamed or just gasped or what, but it was one of the scariest things I've ever happened to me in my life. It only lasted a matter of seconds, and you know, um, the storm kept going on as far as rain pouring down and thunder in it, but no more lightning. But we knew immediately that things in the house, you know, lights flashed on and off. Uh, the My iPad that I was using to film outside stopped working, and when we tried to connect again, then all kind of things were going wrong. So anyway, I don't expect to hear about little green men, but I do hope that when maybe after the show, when I go back on the NASA sites, I'll be able to get some information and no
Wow.
pictures.
All right then. What what a great introduction to our show, Stash.
Well, well, thank you.
You've been
And as far
listening.
as I know,
We're halfway through the
it's
show.
Yeah, it's sci-fi right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't, because it's all things we don't know and stuff that is pretty scary.
You're listening to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org, broadcasting from Bolivar, West Virginia, Martinsburg, West Virginia, or what's left of it at the moment, and Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stash Ziolkowski.
And Stash just told us a story, a science fiction story, but some of it, or we don't know how much of it is not actually fiction, because there are things going on in the world right now. I do want to do a shout out to Andy Offit Irwin, who's going to be our storyteller on July 28th, the end of this month, Monday at 7 p.m. at Unitarian Universalist Church of Hagerstown, 13245 Searfoss Pike in Hagerstown. And I hope people are as excited about that as I am. I'm going to see Andy before that, and I might send him a little update about today's show so he's prepared, and he may call you, Stash.
Yeah, that would be good. I have a question.
Sure.
Here's my question. How did last Monday go?
It was wonderful.
I really, I hope you know that I feel bad about not being able to get out like I used to.
I did get your message.
I just like not going out in the evenings unless it's something really that we feel is important, mm-hmm. or more important than other things. Has got me. It's been a couple of months since I've seen my daughter, who's in mm-hmm. Westminster. It's about 75 miles away, but still, we used to think nothing of it in a car and going down there to see my grandson and play in a soccer game or something. But we don't go out at night unless it's something that we really need to do or want to do, something special. We've not gone to a number of things that we planned months ago, just because of that, because it's hard on both of us, but especially on poor old Stash. It's
well, we did miss you, but there will be more coming, and
all right.
If you feel up to it, you would enjoy it. We would enjoy having you there.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to Andy being in the area, and I'm going to do my darndest to get us there.
Okay. I'm going to jump in and do story number 2 here, because it's a long one, and I want to make sure we have a little time afterwards in case other things come up or you have questions. So this is a short story by Terry Bisson that was originally published in a magazine. It's not brand new. It was originally published 1990 in Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine, and Terry Bisson is Bisson. Now, this is an adapted version of the story because it's much longer than we would have had time for. So I'm going to jump in and start. The title is Bears Discover Fire. I was driving with my nephew Wallace, son of my brother, the preacher. We were north of Bowling Green that Sunday when we got a flat. I'm called the old-fashioned one in my family, fix my own tires. The preacher is always telling me to get radials and quit buying old tires. Wrong. If you know how to mount and fix tires yourself, you can pick them up for almost nothing. Here, son, hold the light, I said. Wallace is old enough to want to help, but not quite old enough to be a help. He thinks he knows it all. If I'd married and had kids, he's the kind I'd want. My 56 Cadillac has a big trunk. It fills up like a shed. Wallace was wearing his Sunday shirt and didn't help while I pulled magazines, fishing tackle, wooden toolbox, old clothes, and tobacco sprayer out of the way, looking for my jack. The spare tire looked a little soft. The light went out. "Shake it, son," I said, and the light went back on. I found the bumper jack and thought about letting Wallace position the jack, but I could hear his father, the preacher, in my head, so I got on my knees and did it myself. The light went off again before I had the wheel off, and I was surprised by the immediate darkness, but it was late October and getting cool. "Shake it again, son," I said. It went back on, but it was flickery. "Shake that light again," I said. It was about gone. I spun the lugs off into the hubcap and pulled the wheel. The tire was blown out along the sidewall. The light went out again and then came back better than ever as I was fitting the spare over the lugs. "Much better," I said. There was a flood of dim orange flickery light. I turned to find the lug nuts and was surprised to see that the flashlight the boy was holding was dead. The light was coming from two bears at the edge of the trees holding small burning torches. Big 300-pound bears standing about 5 feet tall. Wallace had seen them and was standing perfectly still. It's best not to alarm bears. I fished the lug nuts out of the hubcap and spun them on. I usually like to put a little oil on them, but this time I let that go. I reached under the car, let the jack down, and pulled it out, relieved to see the spare was high enough to drive on. I put the jack, the lug wrench, and the flat into the trunk and the hubcap instead of replacing it on the wheel. All this time, the bears never made a move. They just held the torches. Out of curiosity or helpfulness, there's no way of knowing. And there may have been more bears behind them in the trees. Opening two doors at once, we got in the car and drove off. After a few moments of silence, Wallace said, "Looks like bears have discovered fire." Well, when we first took my mother, Wallace's grandmother, to the care home just a mile from the house, almost 4 years ago, she told Wallace's father and me she was ready to die. "Don't worry about me, boys," she whispered, pulling us both down so the nurse wouldn't hear. "I've drove 1,000,000 miles and I'm ready to pass over to the other shore." She drove a school bus for 39 years. Usually on Sunday nights, I drive the preacher and Wallace to see Mother, and then go again myself on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She's usually sitting by the TV, but doesn't seem to watch it. The nurses say the old folks like the flickering, that it soothes them down. "What's this I hear about bears discovering fire?" she said on Tuesday. "It's true," I said, as I combed her long white hair. There had been a story in the Courier Journal and on Tuesday on the nightly news. People were seeing bears all over that had quit hibernating, apparently planning to spend the winter in the medians of the interstates. There have always been bears in the Virginia mountains, but not here in western Kentucky. Not for almost 100 years. Last one killed when Mother was a girl. The newspaper's theory was they were following Interstate 65 down from the Michigan and Canadian forests. But one old man from Allen County, interviewed on TV, said there had always been a few bears back in the hills and they had come out to join the others now that they had discovered fire. They don't hibernate anymore, I said. They make a fire and keep it going all winter. I declare, Mother said, what do they think of next? And a nurse came to take her tobacco, which is the signal for bedtime. Every October, Wallace stays with me while his parents go to camp. That may sound backwards, but my brother is a minister, House of the Righteous Way Reformed, but makes 2/3 of his living in real estate. He and Elizabeth go to the Christian Success Retreat in South Carolina, where people from all over the country practice selling things to one another. I've seen their revolving equity success plan ads on late night TV. The school bus dropped Wallace at my house the day they left. He doesn't pack much of a bag when he stays with me since he has his own room here. I'm the eldest of our family and hung on to the old home place. It's getting run down now, but Wallace and I don't mind. He has his own room in Bowling Green too, but since his parents move to a different house every year, part of the revolving equity success plan, he keeps his 22 and his comics, the stuff that's important to a boy his age, in his room here, same room his dad and I used to share. Wallace is 12. He was on the back porch that overlooks the interstate when I got home from my work selling crop insurance, burley, belt, drought, and hail. I wish I could see the bears, he said, looking across the field to I-65. Can't see their fire in the daytime, I said, but wait till tonight. The night CBS or NBC, I don't remember, did a special on the bears, now a story of nationwide interest as they'd been spotted in Kentucky, West Virginia, Missouri, and Southern Illinois. A scientist said they were heading into the states where there is some snow, but not too much, and enough timber in the medians for firewood. Another scientist said the bears were attracted by the berries on a new bush that grew only in the medians of the interstates, the first new berry species in recent history, brought about by the mixing of seeds along the highway. The man on TV ate one, making a face and calling it a newberry. A climatic ecologist said that the warmer winters had changed the bears' hibernation cycle, so now they were able to remember things from year to year. Bears may have discovered fire centuries ago, he said, but forgot it. Another theory was they had discovered or remembered fire when Yellowstone burned several years ago. Biologists and even paleontologists were arguing for evidence about long concealed skills among bears and maybe other species in the mountains of upper North America. It was enough to shake people's confidence in strict traditional biblical hierarchies. After supper, I took the boy out behind the house and down to our fence. Across the interstate, through the trees, we could see the light of the bear's fire. Wallace wanted to go back to the house and get his 22 and go shoot one, And I had to explain why that would be wrong. Besides, I said, 22 wouldn't do much more to a bear than make it mad. And anyway, it's illegal to hunt in the medians. According to Good Morning America, the bears were keeping their fires going all day long in northern Virginia. Here in Kentucky, it was still warm for late October, and they only stayed around the fires at night. Next morning, Wallace and I climbed the highway fence and crossed the northbound lanes. I had an axe, and Wallace brought his 22, not to kill a bear, but because the boy likes to carry some kind of a gun. The median was tangled with brush and vines under the trees. Just 100 yards from the house, but I'd never been there, and probably no one else that I knew of. We found a path in the center and followed it across the slow, short stream, flowing out one grate and into another. The tracks in the mud were the first bear signs we saw. Then a musty but not unpleasant smell. In a clearing under a big hollow beech where the fire had been, we found ashes, logs drawn up in a rough circle, and the smell was stronger. I stirred the ashes and found coals to start a new flame, so I banked them back the way they'd been left. And then I cut and stacked a little firewood just to be neighborly. I tasted one of the new berries and spit it out, sweet and sour, just the sort you would imagine a bear would like. After supper that evening, I asked Wallace to go with me to visit Mother. Kids have more consideration than folks give them credit for, and he said yes. We found her sitting on the concrete front porch of the home, watching the cars go by on I-65. The nurse said she'd been agitated all day, but every fall as the leaves change, she's been getting restless. I brought her into the day room and combed her hair. Nothing but bears on TV anymore, the nurse complained. After the nurse left, we watched a special report about hunters in Shenandoah Valley who'd gotten their houses torched. The interviewer spoke with a hunter and his wife whose home had burned. She blamed the bears. He didn't blame the bears, but was suing for compensation from the state, saying, I have a valid hunting license. Well, the state hunting commissioner came on in and said, and I quote, possession of a hunting license didn't enjoin the hunted from striking back. I'm not a hunter myself, but that's a pretty liberal view for a state commissioner. Of course, he had a vested interest in not paying off. Don't bother coming on Sunday, Mother told Wallace with a wink. I drove 1,000,000 miles and I've got one hand on the gate. I'm used to her saying stuff like that, especially in the fall. But Wallace did look worried after we left, and I asked him what was wrong. How could she have drove 1,000,000 miles? Yes. She told him 48 miles a day for 39 years, and he worked it out to 336,960 miles. Well, I said, it's 48 miles in the morning and 48 in the afternoon. Plus, there were football trips. Plus, old folks exaggerate. Mother was the first woman school bus driver in the state. She did it every day and raised a family too. Daddy just farmed. On Saturday afternoon, the home called my office to say Mother was gone. I was on the road. I work Saturdays as it's the only day a lot of part-time farmers are home. My heart missed a beat when I called in and got the message, but I had long been prepared. It's a blessing, I said when I got the nurse on the phone. No, 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 she said. You don't understand. Not passed away, gone, ran away, gone. Your mother escaped. Mother had gone through the door at the end of the corridor when no one was looking, wedged the door with her comb, and taking a bedspread belonging to the home. What about her tobacco? I asked. Gone. Sure sign she was planning to stay away. I rushed to the home on I-65. The nurse said Mother had been acting more confused lately. Of course, they would say that. We looked around the grounds. It's only a half acre with no trees between the interstate and a soybean field. They had me leave a message at the sheriff's office and mentioned I'd have to keep paying for her care till she was officially listed missing, which would be Monday. It was dark when I got back to the house, and Wallace was opening cans for our supper. I told him his grandmother had gone, and he nodded, saying, "She told us she would be." I called brother in South Carolina and left a message. As there was nothing else to be done, I sat down and tried to watch TV. But out the back door, I saw firelight twinkling through the trees across the northbound lane of I-65 and had a thought. It was definitely getting colder. So I got my jacket and told Wallace to wait by the phone in case the sheriff called. But when I looked back halfway across the field, there he was behind me. No jacket, but carrying his .22. I made him leave that leaning against our fence. It was harder climbing the government fence in the dark at my age than it had been in the daylight. The highway was busy with cars heading south and trucks heading north. First few feet into the trees, it was pitch black, and the boy grabbed my hand. Then it got lighter. First, I thought it was the moon, but it was the high beams shining like moonlight into the treetops. Wallace and me soon found the path and its familiar bear smell. It was tricky approaching the bears at night. On the path, we might run into one in the dark, but if we went through the bushes, we might be seen as intruders. We stayed on the path. And then through the trees, we saw their fire. A large cinnamon brown bear was poking the fire with a stick, adding a branch now and then from a pile at his side. The others sat around the fire on the logs. Most were smaller black or honey bears. One was a mother with cubs. Some were eating berries from a hubcap. Some just watching the fire. And there was my mother among them, with the bedspread from the home round her shoulders. If the bears noticed us, they didn't let on. Mother patted a spot next to her on the log, and I went and sat down. A bear moved over, and Wallace sat on her other side. The bear smell is rank, but not unpleasant once you get used to it, wilder than the barn smell. I leaned over to whisper something to Mother, and she shook her head. She meant, "It would be rude to whisper around these creatures that don't possess the power of speech." Wallace was silent too. Mother shared the bedspread with us, and we sat for what seemed hours looking into the fire. The big cinnamon bear tended the fire, breaking up the dry branches by holding one end and stepping on them, like people do. He was good at keeping it going at the same level. Another bear poked the fire from time to time, but the others left it alone. Probably only a few of the bears knew how to use fire and were carrying the others along. Isn't that how it is with everything? Every once in a while, a smaller bear walked into the circle of firelight with an armload of wood, dropped it onto the pile. Wallace isn't fidgety like a lot of kids, and this was not so different from visiting Mother at the home, just more interesting because of the bears. Maybe 8 or 10 of them, some with their eyes closed. Though they were gathered together, their spirits still seemed solitary, as if each bear was sitting alone in front of its own fire. The hubcap of new berries came around, and we all took some. I just pretended to eat mine, but Wallace made a face and spit his out. He soon fell asleep, and I wrapped the bedspread round all 3 of us. It was getting colder, and we, unlike bears, had no fur. I was ready to go home, but not Mother. She pointed up toward the canopy of trees where light was spreading, and then pointed to herself. Did she think it was angels approaching from on high? It was only the high beams of some southbound truck, but she seemed pleased. Holding her hand, I felt it grow colder and colder in mine. Next I remember, opened my eyes, was past dawn, and Mother had died sitting on the log between us. The fire was banked up, bears were gone, and someone was crashing through the woods, ignoring the path. It was Wallace. Stood 2 state troopers right behind him. It was Sunday morning, and Wallace looked peeved. The troopers were sniffing the air. The bear smell was still strong. Wallace and I wrapped Mother in the bedspread and started with her body back out to the highway. The troopers stayed behind, scattered the fire ashes, and flung the bear's firewood away into the bushes. That seemed a petty thing to do. They were like bears themselves, each one solitary in his own uniform. And nearby there was a police car with a trooper standing beside it, and behind that, a funeral home hearse. First report we've had of them bothering old folks, the trooper said to Wallace. That's not hardly what happened at all, I said, but nobody asked me to explain. They have their procedures. 2 men in suits got out of the hearse and opened the rear door. That, to me, was the point at which Mother departed this life. After we put her in, I put my arms around the boy. He was shivering, even though it wasn't that cold. Death will do that, especially at dawn, with the police around and the grass wet, even when it comes as a friend. We stood for a minute watching the cars and trucks pass. It's surprising how much traffic there is at 6:22 a.m. That afternoon, I went back to the median, cut a little firewood to replace what the troopers had flung away. And that night, I could see the fire through the trees from my house. I went back 2 nights later, after the funeral. The fire was going, same bunch of bears as far as I could tell. I sat with them a while, but it seemed to make them nervous, so I went home. I'd taken a handful of new berries from the hubcap, and on Sunday I went with the boy and arranged them on Mother's grave. I tried again, but it's no use. You can't eat them unless you're a bear.
Wow. Is that a book?
No, it's in a book of stories, but it's just a short story. Isn't that amazing story?
Yeah.
I love that story.
So you have the book.
I have, it came to me from Jane Dorfman,
Oh,
who was a librarian, of course.
yes.
And she knew this author, Terry Beeson, and she had read the story a really long time ago, but she remembered it has a memorable name.
Oh, how do you
Bears
spell?
Discover Fire.
Yeah.
And so while we were on a Zoom call together, she looked it up and sent it to me from
And
that
how do you spell the
book.
author's name?
Terry, Terry, B as in boy, Isson, Bison.
And he's the author of that story.
Yes.
Okay.
And she said she read it in a book of his stories, but the only credit I found online was that it was originally published in 1990 and was in Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine.
Aha, my buddy.
I find it's just in it. I just love that story.
I would like to
I
get
was a
that.
camper when I was a kid. I went to camp every summer and went camping with my parents every summer for from the time I was a baby until I was in my 40s. So
Oh,
back in the woods with the bears is my cup of tea. Although bears
cool.
with fire would be a whole new experience.
Well, that was pretty incredible. You know something I forgot to do today?
What?
Speak Story series.
I didn't forget. I figured we would do it at the end.
Okay, so all you listeners, look up speakstoryseries.com, and coming up on the 8th of July, Michael McCarthy.
I'm looking forward to that.
And I guarantee you will have a great time. So go to speakstoryseries.com, get all the details, and lots of information about how you can become a supporting member of the group and get your ticket. Find out exactly where to go in Shepherdstown, and it begins at 7:30 in the evening. And it's scheduled to go for 2 hours.
All right.
So
we have a message from John Case, who says provocative African proverb: until the lion learns to write, only the hunter's story will be heard. I'm guessing that relates to the bears discover fire.
Wow, that sounds good. I'm gonna look. I'm gonna look and see if I can locate that in Asimov, because he's one of the places, one of the speakers I took my kids to see, my science kids, when I was teaching at Franklin High School in Reisterstown. I had a special course I taught for seniors, and Asimov gave a presentation at Johns Hopkins, and it was one of the best things I ever did for kids. It was actually, the program was designed for students at Hopkins, but I was able to get in with, I had 5 kids with me, and we were able to leave school early and go to the presentation. It was in the afternoon, which was unusual. Normal, a lot of those things that I took students to in those days were evening programs, which were easy to do because all it needed was permission from the parents, and it didn't affect school. But that particular one was in the afternoon. Great program, huh?
Wish I had been there. We are out of time, so I'm going to close out the show. You've been listening to Fanny Crawford
and Stosh Zielkowski.
Your co-hosts for the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. We are independent community radio broadcasting from Bolivar, West Virginia, Martinsburg, West Virginia, and Hagerstown, Maryland, offering our listeners storytelling from traditional and non-traditional tellers, encouraging our listening community to share, preserve, and expand all our stories. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for John Case up next with...
Let's see, it's Thursday, so that means that's Roots music. Yes, most of the day. But I have an appeal I'd like to make, if that's possible.
Sure.
That our network is looking for reporters. And the job would be attending a local government meeting of your choice. And it has to include somebody that either has the power to tax or spend. Okay. one of those two. So that, school board, county commission, town council, etc.
Oh,
And we are looking for people who are interested then in participating in podcasts that, as far as the local area here, we're organizing pretty much with our Friday show with Karen Valentine. And we just currently called Paris on the Potomac, referring supposedly to Shepherdstown. Anyway,
what was that name, John?
Paris on the Potomac. That's the Friday show on Enlighten Radio here, but
Okay.
with my friend and co-host on a lot of other efforts, Karen
Wonderful
Valentine.
reporter and radio host.
Yes. Okay. So we want to, your job would then be to appear on a show. In this area, it's going to be called Enlighten. It's going to be on our enlightenradio.org network, at least for now. But I think that show, the Friday it's kind of a local politics show because Karen's daughter, ran for delegate, ran a good campaign, lost, but ran a good campaign. And so, maybe Karen will run for governor. She might win. She just might. She's great.
Good to know. I'll pass the word.
Yeah, so we look at reporters, and I think obviously they should be. They'll have to be able to get along with me for now a little while. I went to so that may limit some things, but I'm trying to be generous as hell, really. My goal in these kind of things, having lived through the '60s, was if things aren't going right, and then you try everything you can to fix it, and you can't fix it, burn it down. I'll leave
Hey,
it.
there you go.
All right. So anyway, guys, so thank you guys so much.
Thanks for that quote, John. That's a great quote.
Isn't that a great one? I heard that. That's well, my brother Joe sent me that one. So, all right, take care. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, John. Appreciate your work.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.